All right, so hi Chris, thanks for taking the time
Hi.
to speak with us.
Yeah.
On your website, I was doing some research, and you basically say that back when the idea for Commonweal began, that you were traveling and working construction, you've called yourself a ski bum. So can you take us back kind of to that time where you were when the idea for Commonweal first started, and tell us a little bit about what you were doing?
Yeah, so kind of at that point basically kind of goes back to college. When I was in college, I was at Westchester at that point, and I got a bike and started riding just to get to class. I was playing baseball at that point, so get to baseball practice. Really anywhere I needed to go, I didn't have to worry about parking. I could get to class, in less time than anybody else, and I could take that money that I'd saved and spend it on whatever I needed to in college. So that was kind of the beginning of it, and I was the only roommate that rode my bike. I think there was one other guy on the baseball team that did, but for the most part, people weren't really riding in college. And then post-college, I was in kind of a cycle of traveling and being a ski bum, and so I'd finance those trips by working construction back home. And while I was home, I wanted to save as much money as possible, so I would continue to ride my bike here. And through that, I just became interested in why it was so hard to get even my friends to go join me, just to go from point A to point B, just to get downtown to go out. And I'd say, I'm going to beat you there. I'm not going to pay for parking. I'll be sitting there waiting for you when you get there, and I'll be invigorated, and it adds to my own fitness. So, but it's hard enough just to get my friends. And at that point, there wasn't really a urban bike culture in Lancaster. There was a big road bike culture out in the county. We have some great road biking, but not really urban bike culture. So I'd always known I wanted to start something, and kind of had a few false starts on businesses, and nothing really got off the ground. But I had read in the course of this, I'm a big reader, so I started to read about how cities can become more bike friendly, and the community bike shop model was something I read about, and that sounded like a very good way to start something that was hands-on and have a physical thing to start to build the movement. So it was kind of an idea that started to percolate around the same time as the idea was coming up. My mom, who I was very close to, she ended up passing away after a bout with cancer for many years. So kind of right about the same time, and that was kind of like the final kick in the pants to actually get out and start something. So that was where I was, and it all kind of started with just a really seed of an idea. And when I decided to actually go for it, I got a place at the candy factory. I had a membership there because I knew if I just tried to do it out of my house, nothing would happen. And so one thing kind of led to another, and that's where we are today.
Okay, so again, can you kind of explain, for people who don't know, what exactly is the community bike shop model? What does that mean? So
there's the community bike shop model is various. It looks different across the country, across the world. There's a couple hundred different ones throughout the country, and they all do various things, but for the most part, they're nonprofit or all volunteer-based, community-centric places that run different sorts of programming. So some of them are just basically a shared workshop space, so people can come in and use tools to fix up their bikes. Some of them focus on kids programs, and some of them are sort of like what we've become, where we're kind of a hybrid of a for-profit shop and the program side of things.
And you had mentioned when you kind of first got this idea and you were riding in college and came back to Lancaster that you kind of met some resistance, even from your friends who didn't really want to ride. What were some of the excuses and kind of the roadblocks that you ran into with people riding bikes in Lancaster?
So a lot of them are still here. The biggest thing is a lot of people don't feel safe. They don't feel safe riding on the road. They don't feel like that people will see them or understand. And that's something that we're trying to work on. A big problem with, it's kind of a chicken and egg problem that we have. And so the biggest thing I always say is the more people you can get on bikes, the safer biking becomes, but you have to get those people on bikes. So safety is a big issue. I mean, a lot of it has just been people just don't have like they don't have a bike. They might have a fancy road bike that they take out, but they don't want to ride that downtown or down to the market. Or they have a bike that maybe they've gotten from Walmart that's fallen apart and they haven't had it put together, and it's just a pain to ride. And there's also just been a big issue with image and communication-wise. I mean, we've been marketed to that bikes are this sports thing that requires all the gear, and it's going to take you 20 minutes to get ready, and it's a big thing. You need to be in optimal physical condition to do it. So a lot of it is just kind of changing that mindset. So I think and by physically being here, we can help with a lot of those small hurdles. And because once you can get somebody out and doing it, they can really start to pick up. I mean, example I always use is my wife. She had, before we met and started dating, she had never rode at all, and she was absolutely terrified to do it. And then she started riding with me, just always with me, following me wherever we would go. And now at this point, she rides pretty much everywhere. She needs to get within the city. So the big benefit to us is that we were then able to get rid of a car. So we now just have one car, and the average cost of operating a car is about $8,000 a year. So that's money that is going back into our pockets that we can then spend. And the good thing about getting people on bikes is they tend to spend their money locally. So yeah.
You said I saw a TED talk that you did, and you kind of mentioned that you have this mission to appeal to the community about supporting bikes. So have you done anything as far as like meeting with people in the community to try to make Lancaster like a safer place for biking? Yeah,
so we've been involved, since the beginning in some of the efforts that have been going on. They're definitely starting to pick up a lot of momentum. I think we've helped a lot with kind of, driving the people. Like I said, it's a chicken and egg. Like if there's no people fighting for the infrastructure, it's not going to be put in. Until it's put in, we're not going to get more people riding. So we've been able to kind of fill that gap. And I think there's a lot going on now. There's the city and county have a plan that's coming together that's actually a comprehensive plan that will help a lot with that. And sort of for us, it's, the more people we can get interested, the more we can start to influence the leaders, and it just is a ball that keeps on rolling. So we've had official conversations, and then whenever I see anybody, Lancaster is kind of a small enough place, so whenever I see anybody, that's always the first thing. And a big thing for us is I can go to a meeting and say yes, we should have bikes, but how much weight does that hold? Of course, I'm the one, I have a bike shop, so I want people to get on bikes. But I think the big thing is to get people that aren't your typical rider. So the cool thing, we had an art show here last weekend, and Janine Sirachi, who's the Democratic candidate for mayor, she came to the art show, and she rode her bike over here from across town. So I think, getting people like that. We had Tom Baldridge, the president of the local chamber. He came and got his bike fixed. He wants to start riding downtown. So I think the more we get, leaders, riding downtown and showing that it can be done. And then just the more we can get, really the bellwether is also, women and children. We get those out because it's getting away from the idea of, I said bicycling is a rich man's sport or a poor man's last chance. So it's starting to change that image of, this is really a thing that's great for anybody that's physically able to do it. It has so many benefits just personally, but also to the society. So.
You started programs, right, to kind of support that. I think I saw on the website you have like women's nights here, and you have the Earn a Bike program for kids. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Yeah, so the Earn a Bike class is something we've run kind of from the very beginning. That's kind of our flagship program, and that's 5 weeks, twice a week after school. The kids get to come in, they pick out a donated bike, and the only thing, it just has to, we make sure that it fits them. That's kind of the only criteria. And then over those 5 weeks, we teach them how to overhaul the whole bike. So they go in and they're, cleaning, opening things up, making the adjustments. We have 2 professionally trained mechanics here who are awesome. They lead the class and make sure everything's put together right. And then at the end of it, we also teach them safe riding skills and then get them out on the road. And as we were doing that, one of the things we noticed is we were just signing people up kind of as they came in the door. And we're here in the park, so we didn't have any trouble with sign-ups, but it tended to be mostly boys. And so
we started to do we're now doing twice a year an all-girls class. So
cool.
we ran our first one in the spring, and now our next one's coming up in the fall. And then, yeah, and just in general, we're looking to run some more women's programs. It's something that we've kind of started a few times. Early on, it was just the only staff were 2 men.
Yeah.
So we had some volunteers that were starting. It's called Women on Wheels, and we started to get off the ground. And our volunteers that were leading it kept moving to places that were already bike friendly usually. So and so then it's kind of just been working, and then we've just been trying to kind of hone in on what we can do here. But Megan, who's our head mechanic, she's really interested in helping, get more women out on bikes and some of the programs we can run. So we hope moving into the future we can start to do some more intentional programming.
Yeah, I think that's cool, because I think for a lot of people it's not just riding and the safety, but I love the mechanical part of it too, because then you're always like, well, what if I'm out there and something happens and I don't know what to do, and I'm like, stuck on the side of the road. So yeah, I think that would be really empowering to know how to fix your bike as well. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So in addition to the kids class, we also run adult mechanic classes. So they're kind of just the basics to keeping your bike running on the road. And yeah, in the past that was actually our most successful Women on Wheels night we had a fix-a-flat clinic, and we had a bunch of women come out and learn, because that's a big thing. It's just
good skills.
Being able to know how to get back on the road when you're out wherever.
I know you kind of touched on some of these already, but could you just kind of focus a little bit on the benefits of having a community? Like, why are you so passionate about having this biking community, or community that supports biking? What are the benefits of it?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things are kind of obvious. I mean, obviously when you're running your bike, you don't have all the costs of a car. So I mean, you're saving the money on gas, obviously, which is leaving the community every time you use the gas tank, fill up your gas tank. So there's benefits there. And like I said earlier, there's economic benefits to the local retailers, because there's studies shown that people who ride, tend to spend more money locally, and they spend it more often. But then obviously, we have a big obesity epidemic. So anytime you can have active transportation as opposed to the passive, that's going to be a benefit. So it's a benefit personally, and as well as a benefit to the public health of the whole society. Another big, a big thing I always tell people is, like, it's just like cars. You're kind of you're stuck in them. You don't actually see anybody. I think the idea of, like, when I'm on my bike, I run into somebody or I just wave to them, and I can just pull over and have a 2-minute conversation with them. I think it just builds a much more closely tied, friendly community. So those are kind of 3 of the big ones. And then obviously there's the environmental argument as well. So, running a bike, we don't have to worry about pollution. And I know there was somebody was just telling me the other day about, there was a big article in the paper about parking garages, and we've got limited real estate here, and the more we have to spend that on parking cars that are just going to sit there and take up that space, if we have more people on bikes, we don't need as much as that, and that can open up some valuable opportunities for the things that we do need, like housing and grocery stores, so things like that.
So if we go back again kind of to the beginning, when you found this space and the shop finally opened, what was that like for you? What it finally all came together and you got to start the classes and actually help people?
Yeah, it was really great. I mean, so the big hurdle for us was a space. I mean, we had pretty much no money. I think when we found this space, we might have had $50 in our bank account. So finding a space that we could use, and we came and looked at this. So this is the pump house. There used to be a reservoir on the other side. It's now Reservoir Park, and they used to pump the water up to this big blue water tower, which now serves as a cell tower. This building kind of sat empty since the 50s when they moved the water tower. So when the city, we went to the city to kind of tell us what we were thinking of doing, and asked them if they knew of any space. I didn't think they would actually have any, but they mentioned this, and it came to look at it, and it was in pretty bad condition. But luckily, like I had that construction background, and we call it the world's cheapest construction project. We were able to kind of overhaul the whole space, including an ADA bathroom, opening up all these windows, getting everything done. We did it all for less than $15,000. So yeah, so that was a good way to kind of get in, was start off with a little construction project. And then opening the doors, it's been a gradual process to where it looks like it does today. It can really help. So we've got Dan and Megan are here. Dan just almost knocked over your camera. But since they've been here, they've really, they're much more organized, really got the shop where it's looking fantastic. And so when we first opened, it was pretty sparse in here. But it was good just to get the doors open, and people showed up on day one. So going back to, you'll notice in my story, I never worked in a bike shop or really had any mechanical skills. So when I first got started, we were lucky to have, there was a boyfriend at the time of a friend from high school was in town, Brad, and he was a professional mechanic, and they were here house sitting for a year. So he helped me get started as the mechanic side of things. And so we've always had professional mechanics here, to the point now where we have two fantastic people. So I've learned the basics, but to this point, the less I touch the bikes, everybody's happier.
So then what's your role in particular here now?
Yeah, my role is kind of just to be the ambassador to the community, make sure everything's staying on the rails, directing us forward. Fundraising is a big thing. So we operate the shop, and it helps bring in revenue. It helps, subsidize some of the costs. We couldn't afford, on day one when we opened, we've always had at least 2 full-time employees, and we couldn't do that without the shop. So we do operate the shop as a way to bring in some revenue, but also just, a way to get well-working, affordable bikes out to people that need them. But that doesn't cover all the bills for what we need to do, particularly with some of the programs that we run. So fundraising is kind of a big part of my job, and then I just kind of fill in here and there and make sure everything's good. But yeah, I leave the mechanics side of things to the professionals. So yeah.
So if someone were just to stop in here on a typical day, what kind of things would they see happening? Yeah,
so if we're not running any direct programming, we have over here, these are bikes, all of our used bikes have been donated. Some of them we use for our programs, but some of them we refurbish. The mechanics refurbish them. So we sell those to the general public at market rate. So we have adult and kids bikes. We started to sell some new bikes, mainly just things that we would never see, but that we think are great for riding in the city. So single speeds is one example of that. And we also do a full range of service. So if there's anything in our bike that needs fixing, it can be fixed. And you come in here, you might also see obviously being in the park, we often have a lot of kids show up needing to fix their bike. So we have some specific hours for self-service. So for the kids or people in the community that want to use our tools and our stands, we're kind of here to help. And also for some of the kids that don't have the skills to fix up, what we do is, and they don't have any money, a big thing we do now is we kind of charge them by the bag full of trash that they pick up. So,
oh, wow. That's
so they kind of go throughout in the park, and people are sometimes like, "There's that much trash here," and it's like, well, it keeps coming every week. So, so yeah,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, if they need a flat fixed or something like that, and they don't have any money, we make sure they fill up a bag full of trash, or depending if it's a more extensive repair, it's multiple bags. So.
Yeah. That is really cool.
So that's kind of what would happen just on your typical day when we're not running programs. And then you'd see the mechanics are helping people that are walking in, also getting some bikes ready for some of our programs that aren't specifically teaching. So we have a Bikes for All program that's kind of evolved a lot, working with Church World Service to get bikes, particularly to refugees. Something that they need, whether it's to get to work or just get to appointments or get around. And we've seen, refugees kind of get bikes, intrinsically. I mean, they're not going to have a car anytime soon. They're certainly not going to have a license anytime soon. It really opens up a big world for them. So what we do is we work with Church World Service, and now we've expanded to some other social service agencies, and they get a bike, lock, light set, and helmet, and it's a cost of $15 to the client. So that's something else that the mechanics might be working on if we don't have service or getting bikes ready for the floor. So that's kind of the main thing that happens. It's always interesting, people come in and that then end up talking to each other. We have a very wide range of backgrounds that come in. Bikes is, like I said earlier, there's a lot of people that come in that'll bring their old parts and things that were off of a bike that, a $10,000 bike or something like that, and then they're having a conversation with somebody who's been here for 3 weeks from Sudan. So not an extensive conversation, but they can bond over the parts. That's been a big part when we run Earn a Bike. We've had a lot of refugee kids and kids with but also with some disabilities. So language is sometimes an issue with other programs they're in, but the kind of nice thing about mechanics is they're able to use their hands and they can kind of just see what's going on. And it's pretty cool to see some of the kids that kind of light up when it's something that they don't have to worry about completely communicating, but they can just dive in and see what's going on and test it and see what works and what doesn't. So that's a big thing for us.
Are there any particular stories that have, since you've opened, that have really meant a lot to you? Like any people you've helped or anything you've seen around here that just makes you think like, yes, this is why I'm doing this?
Yeah, there's been a lot. One recently, it's been evolving, is Tyler, he was in our very first Earn a Bike class. He lives right across the street, and so our first Earn a Bike class was in 2014, and he just entered the class. He didn't really know anything about bikes, didn't know anything about mechanics working on bikes, but he got in the class because he was right across the street. He figured he should try it out, and ever since then he's kind of been a fixture here. He would just come in and work on his bike and help us with things until the point where we got to where we started paying him. He works part-time here seasonally, and he got so into the mechanic side of things that he's going to spend his senior year of high school over at Stevens. So he's going for electromechanical engineering. So and the guy that leads the electromechanical program we actually know separately. And he brings his students over here for a class that Dan teaches on bearings, so it was a hands-on thing. So he's very excited to get someone like Tyler who, already has that hands-on ability. And that's kind of a big thing of where we're looking to go in the future as far as the youth development side is, we don't necessarily think we'll churn out like an army of professional bike mechanics. We might have a few here and there, but the idea of putting tools in kids' hands that might not have ever done that or even thought about it, and then just being, literally directly across the street from Stevens, where they graduate people with a 99% job placement rate, is something that we find exciting, and we want to help get more kids like Tyler over there. Another story that I like is a guy named Bellarmino, who he was a refugee from Cuba. And when they come over here, it takes a while to get working papers. So he wasn't able to work for a while, but he had a bike shop of his own when he was in Cuba, which is obviously quite a bit different than here. You can't just order new parts when you want. So he had a lot of different skills. Some of them which we tried to discourage. He's very good with a hammer and some other things. So, but we got to see him here every day and kind of get to know him for over a course of a couple of months. And we saw that he's very good mechanically and very hard worker. So we were able to help him get a job with a construction company. And so he's now, he's been full-time there, I think, for almost 2 years. And he's happy. The only downside is now when he comes over to help, he's in a car. So, but other than that, yeah, it's great to see. Because he probably would have been, without that, he wouldn't have had a connection to a construction job. And, so those are a couple. And then there's kind of always smaller stories. We get to know a lot of different characters and people. There's one in the paper about Moses is a guy that comes around quite often. We know him, and he ended up finding, he found a bike, an abandoned bike in the park, but he saw like there was a sticker half torn off it. It was our sticker, and so he got in touch with us, asked us if we knew whose bike it was, and we did. We knew who it was, and So we told him, and they put them in touch, and the guy went to get it, and Moses had not only gotten the bike back to him, but he cleaned the bike up and replaced the tires and returned it to him. So there's a lot of those kind of small connections that we don't really directly have anything to do with, but yeah.
I read you said at one point that when you guys do the slow rides, that you love how it's kind of all different types of people that seem to come together. And there was one story, I think, about, was it like two older ladies going through a neighborhood that they had never been in downtown, and they were like, ooh, like, I've never been in this neighborhood. Just kind of breaking down those barriers and walls.
So I'll just clarify, the slow ride is not directly the Commonweal's event. It's something that we helped get started, and now it's taken on a life of its own. But those types of ride, that's the thing that starts to build that culture and gets different people out and riding and seeing like, hey, before you know it, we just rode 8 miles around and crisscrossed the city 3 times, and it was not a big deal. But yeah, through those slow rides, getting those people out there, and it's a big thing it's just a completely different way of seeing the city. You're on a bike, you can actually, you're slow enough to see things, but you can also get places. So that idea of when people do the slow ride, it's drawing people in from out of town, from Manheim Township, from the suburbs, and taking them into neighborhoods like in the Southwest or Southeast that they would probably never go to, never drive through, and being able to go at a slow enough pace to see everybody, see the life on the streets, and kind of waving and smiling and seeing everything that's going on there. It's not like this place where if they just read the news, they think there's just shootings going on every day, and so it's a big thing to kind of be able to do that. And it's something that I've seen, like going to Baltimore has a big one called Baltimore Bike Party, and my sister lives in Baltimore, and I've gone there all the time, but I've never gone to the neighborhoods that we would go through on the bike party. And so just to see, and it's the same thing there, everybody's out on the porches waving and smiling, and I think it starts to break down some of those preconceived notions of what those neighborhoods are like. And
so what do you see, or what is your hope, I guess, for the future of Commonweal? Like if we look 10 years down the road?
Yeah, so we've got kind of a lot of hopes. So really we do kind of break it down into 3 things. So the first thing is kind of what we were started on, like let's build this movement, and I think we can get Lancaster. Lancaster's small enough that we can kind of help kickstart a movement that will start to change the tide. And it doesn't take that much. One thing about not having any bike culture, we don't really have any data at this point. But if we can get 10% of the people here to consider riding, and the big thing to tell people is it's not like you're flipping a switch and all of a sudden like get rid of your car and just ride no matter what the conditions. It's really just on a perfect day like today, consider riding your bike. Ride a couple of times. Ride, to the store or to the market. The more we can do that. So I think for that side of things, and the more we can help with providing that access to people and that entryway in, I think we can kickstart it. And like I've said before, I think once it starts, it will spread. Because usually the best way to get people to ride is if their friends are riding, and their friends become passionate supporters and kind of guide them through the process. So we can help with the access side of things, and they can help with that extra push. So I think we can really help turn Lancaster into on the map as a bike-friendly city with a burgeoning bike culture. And then the other 2 pieces then are, like I mentioned before, with a kids mechanics side. So we want to be able to send multiple kids over to Stevens that have gone through our program. So right now we have that initial earn a bike, but we can kind of develop that further to where more kids are getting more advanced skills and tying that into these STEM type jobs and get them moved on. And the third piece for us is starting to get into adventures. So you can go pretty much anywhere on a bike. You can take anywhere on a bike, and so for both the kids that we're seeing, and then just people in general, showing them all the things that they can do. To go. There's a rail trail that goes from Pittsburgh to DC. So getting people out there, being able to take kids from here, from this, that have probably, you know, I often say some kids have never even seen the Susquehanna that are coming in here. So to be able to say, here's a bike that you've fixed yourself, that you can maintain yourself, and then be able to ride, you know, from Pittsburgh to the Washington Monument or something like that would be a big thing to, you know, and really what that does, it starts to expand, you know, their worldview and expand the worldview of what's possible. And so on the kid's side, but also like on the adult side, I think a lot of people kind of get, like Lancaster doesn't have like an immediate, like right outside our doors, adventures. I mean, they're here, but there's, again, it's the same thing as bikes, there's friction to it. So if we can start to get that more, I think anytime you can encourage people to get out into nature and make that adventure side a part of their life, it's a benefit to everybody. So those are kind of the big three areas we're looking to move into.